What are the human rights? The things that we all want for our families. We want safety. We want the best education that we can get. But the NAACP is for racial equality and the elimination of racial hatred. So the question that we asked 43 years after Dr. King had his head blown off, violently as an advocate of nonviolence. And of course, at the time, the newspapers made sure when they announced his death that they made sure that they emphasized it was a white male who shot Dr. King, and this country erupted. Why did it erupt? Because those of us who believed in nonviolence had seen that that didn't work. It had been completely annihilated. So the question was, what do we do now? And the question that we have in New Jersey is, what do we do now? We see that the wealthy are getting wealthier and the poor are getting poorer. Think about the fact that we have a Martin Luther King Commission in the state of New Jersey that the governor defunded. That's how important it was to him that Martin Luther King's dream lives on. He took the money away. Think about New Jersey today, that in the most dangerous cities in America, we've laying off police officers. How does Dana Red say to the citizens in her city, 1 week after it's labeled as the second most dangerous city in America, 160 cops and some firefighters will lose their job? If I was a Blood, a Crip, or a Latin King, I would say, boy, let's go, boys, because there's nobody out there. But then we look at what is happening with education. Dr. King was an advocate of quality education in the public schools because he knew that most of the people in the civil rights movement didn't have money to send their kids to private schools. Private schools have always meant private money, and it should remain that way. It should remain that way. Dr. King's legacy is that he realized that there was racism in this country, but he appealed to the common interests of people across all race, religion, and all the types of differences. See, if we talk about our commonalities, we can get to some real progress. But there are people who constantly want to point out our differences. I work at Montclair State, and I know that some of you, because of unions, were able to buy houses, and you're planning to send your children to our university, which is going to open up some ranks in some of the jobs you do. But are you prepared to let in those folks who are not in your ranks right now? African Americans are not in many of the unions in this state. But the NAACP is very concerned that when you start talking about Mr. Muhammad's union and CWA, you're talking about a union that's overwhelmingly female and minority. If we don't defend those folks, then we're going to lose the whole piece. You know, I get so upset when I hear people say they want their country back. Well, when did you lose it? We went one black man to the White House, and now we have 0 in the Senate. When did you lose your country? But don't allow that type of racist, derogatory, divisive rhetoric to lead you down the party to change what you did in 2009 from what you did in 2008. You understand that? We went to the polls in 2008 and elected the first African American in the history of this country. But last year, 2009, we allowed an ultra-conservative bully to become the governor of the state. And now he's coming after you, okay? He's not talking about racism, hasn't mentioned a word about it. But he knows that if he talks about urban policy, he got most of the African Americans and the Latinos and poor people in that little game plan. Because you see, when over 50% or pretty much 50% of all of the African American and Latino students in the state of New Jersey go to 31 of the poorest schools in the state, that's urban policy. So don't get it confused. Urban policy in New Jersey has come to mean black, poor, and Latino. Now let me remind you that the NAACP is nonpartisan, but we know that we're the most loyal component of the Democratic Party. Governor Christie has said to us, you didn't help me get here, so I don't feel much responsibility to reward you. So I take away the only black judge on the Supreme Court in the state of New Jersey and recommend a white female from Morris County. That's justice. That's shared grief, okay? This whole thing of shared pain is not about shared pain. It's refusing to take the money from the folks who have the money so that we can serve the people who do not have the money. We're talking about wealth, we're talking about race, we're talking about poverty, we're talking about disadvantage. So I come today as the civil rights organization that has for 102 years fought for everything that we have accomplished, and we are here to join partnerships with unions. And we have to do the same thing, don't we? To me, it's very simple. We are one. Our mission for the next few years is to organize, to educate, and to mobilize our members to make this country what it's capable of being. Thank you very much.
The city awaits the arrival of Dr. Martin Luther King today. He plans to defy a federal court order which bans his second mass march in Memphis next Monday. It would now appear that if the court order is not amended or dissolved, King, as he did in Montgomery and Birmingham, faces another direct confrontation with authorities, this time in the streets of Memphis.
Now we're going to march again, and we've got to march again in order to put the issue where it is supposed to be. And force everybody to see that there are 1,300 of God's children here suffering. Now about injunctions. We have an injunction, and we're going into court tomorrow morning to fight this illegal, unconstitutional injunction. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.